The United States has attacked Iran last night, and we had the Iranian response. They attacked the cities in the southern part of Iran, close to the Persian Gulf. Two islands, Qeshm Island and Sirik Island, and they used Tomahawk missile. What was so important, in my opinion, the use of Tomahawk missiles? They said CENTCOM and Donald Trump, they have reported that they used something like 46 Tomahawk missiles. What is the importance of that? They don't need to get close to the Iranian border. They far away from the Iranian border using Tomahawk missiles to hit the targets. And most of these targets were close to the Persian Gulf, the cities and the islands. We had some reports from Karaj, which is close to the Iranian capital. Is then we had at least two bombings there, and that's all. All targets were in the southern part, and two strikes in the city of Karaj, at least from what we've seen last night. And then Iranian response on Kuwait, Jordan, and Bahrain. There's some footages came out last night that they hit the target in the airbase, the Muaffaq Salti airbase in Jordan. Right now, we've learned just moments ago, it says no confirmation, by the way. The latest news, it says that they have hit some fighter jets in that airbase. This is the current situation with the war. And Donald Trump, before starting attacking Iran, he said, we want to put pressure on them to accept the deal. What is that deal? We don't know. The Qatari delegation went to Iran yesterday. We thought that they got out of Iran before the attack happening. No, today it was confirmed that they were in Iran when the United States was attacking Iran. And today they left Iran. This is one part. And the other important point is that all of this is coming after some sort of allegation, some sort of story coming from the United States that it was an Apache helicopter in the Strait of Hormuz, which was shot by a drone, Iranian drone, hit the helicopter. The two pilots are alive, no injuries, nothing. And this is the whole story is so fragile, and I don't know if there is somebody or anybody would believe what they're talking about. And here is where are we headed right now? Donald Trump is he wants to force Iranian into a new position to accept his terms. Iran said before coming to this live, we had Iranian military advisor to the supreme leader of Iran. He said, we are going to force the United States to accept our terms. They cannot do it to us. This is the position of Iranians and Donald Trump. Go ahead, and your take on that.
Well, I don't see how Iranians could possibly make the United States accept Iranian terms when the United States has the greatest military in the history of the Milky Way galaxy, and they can do everything. And the last version about the Apache helicopter that I got from 3 sources close to the Pentagon is that Captain America himself swooped in and rescued the pilots. I'm sorry. It's so beyond belief, the stories that they're spinning. I mean, the Apache helicopter story, I've heard so many versions by now, and it's just getting more fantastical as they retell it again and again, that you can't possibly believe anything, but you always hear the greatest military in ever in history of creation. Yeah, maybe, but they're kind of spread thinly across the whole world in some 800 military bases. And to my mind, Donald Trump and his team decided to double down on stupid, because I don't see why they think that they can force the Iranian government to submit themselves to their terms. Iran is there. They're at home. They're fighting an existential war. The United States is 10,000 miles away from home, fighting a war of choice. Everything that the United States has naval assets and it has military bases, and they're all right there on the surface. They can't move. Well, the ships can move, but military bases can't move. The Iranians, who have prepared for this for more than 20 years, have most of their key, most sensitive assets dug deep underground. So they're extremely difficult to destroy. Maybe they're impossible to destroy. And so every time there's an exchange of fire, the Iranians inflict damage that the United States cannot easily reverse. The United States, if they hit anything of importance, they inflict damage that is relatively easy for the Iranians to reverse and repair, right? So every time you exchange gunfire, missiles, bombs, whatever, one side is getting progressively weakened, and one side is, at worst, stays more or less at the same level. It's very difficult to demystify the thinking that goes into these decisions. But I read reports from Russian intelligence agencies that say that all this nonsense, the talks, the ceasefire, that this is all cover in preparations for a ground offensive. Okay, that makes sense. But ground offensive when? In July? What sense does that make? It's like the absolutely the hottest time of the year. It's brutal. Again, it favors the defender versus the attacker. So where are they going with this? It's like they're sprinting into the jaws of defeat. I don't really understand. And then, Trump's statements, it's better not to hear them, because it's just going farther and farther into on the one hand fantastical, and it's getting more and more vulgar. It's like they it seems to me like they don't know what to do, and the only thing they know how to do is drop bombs. So they say, like, what do we do now? Well, what the hell, let's just drop more bombs and see, maybe something happens. At any rate, I think that their position is growing weaker and weaker. I think particularly Israel's position is growing weaker and weaker. They don't say it, they don't announce it, but we can see in Israel's conduct of the wars that they have lost confidence in a big way, that they're quite desperate. And one thing that I've been wondering now, because, this is like a historical opportunity for Iran to completely change the security architecture in their region. And that, to my mind, means that they have to keep the momentum going, especially as they are hurting their adversaries. And for all these years in preparation for this, they have also created this axis of resistance, which includes probably more assets than we know of. You mentioned Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq. How powerful that is, we don't know, but it's also part of a larger network of security forces in Iraq, which is allied with Iran. We don't know exactly what happened to parts of the Syrian Arab armies that left Syria after Bashar al-Assad's government fell, but they went somewhere. We know that some parts of it went into Iraq, but who knows, maybe they ended up in Iran as well. And so I've been wondering whether there isn't going to be a ground element to this war, simply start going across Iraq into Syria and then coming to Israel's borders and then start having incursions into Israel. And so I think that the recent reports about Hezbollah infiltrating Israel are very interested in this sense because at first it was one guy who just went on his own. But then apparently that's not exactly what happened. There are reports that there have been more of these incursions, and that now Israelis are not quite sure whether they have enemies inside of their borders. So I think that Israel is in a heightened state of anxiety and panic, and there's nothing the United States can do really to help them. So I think the summer is going to be extremely interesting, and I think that the events are going to favor Iranian position against the United States and Israel.
I think what you've mentioned about the ground invasion, the assessment on the part of Iranian intelligence is the same, because since since the start of the war, the United States is attacking Iran, and we were watching Iran is attacking Erbil, Iraqi Kurdistan. Is not responding to the United States, but they're attacking Iraqi Kurdistan because they thought they may be some sort of movement on that part. They wanted to get in or maybe attacking Iranians. That's why they were controlling the Iraqi Kurdistan in Erbil. I would say the Erbil is just becoming maybe new Gaza, because they see what is happening. The people are, they're coming in, they're trying to get in, but there's some areas that they're using these terrorist groups, and Iran just been leveling. They have been leveling these areas. And the other point with the American attack, they tried to hit the petrochemical plant in Asaluye, close to Bushehr. Two Tomahawk missiles were intercepted in that. This is the new thing for the Iranian air defense system. We haven't seen that before. Then the CENTCOM came out and said, we didn't attack the petrochemical plant. But people on the ground, they're confirming that has happened, because they thought in the initial hours, the reports was this, that the United States hit the petrochemical plants in Asaluye. They said that. Then they said, no, this smoke that is coming up is because of those Tomahawk missiles. They hit the Tomahawk missiles and nothing has happened. No damage to the petrochemical plant. That was the whole story. And when it comes to the invasion, I think it's so stupid, Alex. I don't see any viable choice for the United States to go with the invasion. Let's assume that they're gonna do something in the Persian Gulf, with the Khark Island, as they were talking about it, with the Qeshm Island, or maybe at the same time they do something in the Persian Gulf, and they're asking these Kurdish people to come in from the other side, or maybe Baluchi people. But the intelligence is so, they're monitoring everything in Iran. They know what the movement before the attack happening. They're preempting everything on their borders. These are all preemptive attacks. And if the United States comes in the Persian Gulf, that would be a huge confrontation between the United States and Iran. And I don't see any sort of good scenarios for the United States if they decide to do that.
Yeah, I agree with that, Nima. And I think, oh, by the way, question. A few hours ago, we had reports that the Iranians struck an American ship with like a hypersonic anti-ship missile. Is that confirmed?
No, it wasn't. It was Israeli media
Yes,
telling.
yes,
It was
Israeli media.
two times. They said that Iran hit a warship, American warship. Then they said it was a hypersonic missile. Later on, they said Iran hit two, commercial ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Then the people came out and confused that first ship that was hit with the second, report in the Strait of Hormuz. They said maybe those two ships were mentioned in that report, but There is no confirmation. We don't know what has happened. That could be the case. That could be the case because Sandcom said there is no. He said none of American warships were hit by was hit by Iranian missiles or drones, but Sandcom denied that. But Sandcom again, they're denying the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is totally closed as we talk. They said no
Yeah.
ships, not Chinese, Russian, Pakistani, nothing is passing through right now. And the United States Centcom said, no, the strait is open. And even today, we had an article in Financial Times. It says there is a narrow corridor close to the Omani border that they're using that, which was totally denied by Iranians for the last 2-3 days. They said that doesn't exist. They're trying to make that sort of argument to make some sort of solution, some sort of delusion for the oil tankers, because that's why last night we've seen some of these oil tankers being hit by Iranians because they thought that they can pass through the Strait of Hormuz. This is the way that the United States is manipulating the region, believing that they can convince these tankers, to
Well,
go.
not only the region, but also the oil markets, because, if they're sneaking out, 200 million barrels of oil out of the Gulf, and the Iranians can do nothing about it, then that people would think like, oh, well, yeah, we're almost close to normal. It used to be 30 to 40 tankers worth of oil per day. So now what is Trump insinuating? That they're doing 10, 20? So that's almost back to normal, but that's almost certainly not true. I mean, it's very unfortunate that we cannot believe anymore one single word that comes from out of the U.S. administration, because they keep spinning stories, and then very quickly it turns out that they're not true. And so then, particularly the best version of their stories are automatically suspect. So you cannot believe anything at all.
Yeah, the what was noticeable last night that Iran didn't attack UAE. Iran didn't attack Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, but they attacked Jordan, Kuwait, and Bahrain. This is, I don't know what is the main reason basically when it comes to UAE, but if Trump last night said Israel is not part of this operation, they're not helping us, they're not doing anything, that the Israelis confirmed, in various, statements that we are not part of this war, we're not doing anything there. And one argument could be because of the Ben Gurion airport, which is full of aircrafts, American aircrafts. If Iran attacks it, they're going to hit each and every one of those aircrafts. The other point would be how Israel is, somehow the air defense system is not working. Last night, at the same time that we had this war, we had Lebanese rockets hitting the targets in the southern part of Lebanon and in the northern part of Israel. And looking at the situation, Alex, do you think it's American agenda, or the Israel is forcing the United States? Because Israel, they had some sort of equation in the region. They want to attack each and every country without being attacked. Those days are gone. And I don't see the United States being capable to turn the situation or to get it back to what it was before this war started.
I think that here we have a mystery of some sort, Nima, because it's very hard to explain how a small country in the Mediterranean can so completely control the military of the world's greatest superpower, how they can have so much influence. And then people will say like, oh, well, yeah, but like Jewish donors have a lot of money. Okay, what are you saying? That the Chinese don't have a lot of money? That the Arabs don't have a lot of money? The Russians don't have a lot of money? A lot of actors in this world have a lot of money. So it's not money. It's something beyond that. And I think that there's some kind of an Anglo-Zionist conspiracy that has very deep roots, that probably has been infiltrating and co-opting the United States governing structures for decades now, probably since before Israel was even conceived. We can even go to the creation of the Schofield Bible and the promotion of this new Christianity, which is completely alien to traditional Christianity, which is all about rapture, all about biblical times, Armageddon, second coming of Christ, and all this stuff. And so it appears that they have such influence that they've completely subverted American democracy. A case in point, last week's passage of National Defense Authorization Act for 2027, which includes Section 224, which practically puts the whole US military with its technologies, data, infrastructure, practically everything completely on disposal to Israel. It effectively fuses the United States military with Israeli military. The United States never had this kind of a relationship with any other ally ever. So how can this possibly be? And then this morning I'm watching a journalist going through US Congress. And so the NDAA bill didn't pass yet. It passed through the Armed Services Committee of the House of Representatives, and then there's a process. It goes to the Senate. It goes to it'll be 6 months before it passes. But there's virtually no opposition. Ro Khanna proposed an amendment to strip out Section 224, and it was rejected. And then Thomas Massie said that he would propose an amendment to strip it out. But again, we know that all these people are so completely on the hook to Israeli interests that at this point they're no longer even hiding it. So this morning I was watching a very recent video. A journalist goes to the House of Representatives, and he's asking all these congressmen and congresswomen, United States first or Israel first? And he must have asked at least a dozen of them as they're passing like this. Only one of them says United States first. All the others couldn't even say, of course, United States first. We are democratically elected representatives. We represent our constituents. This is what we're here for. Obvious thing. What's the stupid question for? But no, none of them can bring themselves, well, one exception, can bring themselves in front of a camera to say America first. This is simply surreal. I'm amazed. I'm completely amazed. And so obviously, if they have sufficient influence to push this through US Congress, to basically introduce Israeli Trojan horse into the American military structures, well, are they powerful enough then to push for a draft to start recruiting American youth into the army to go and fight Iran for Israel? Palantir's talking about this. Alex Karp has been talking about this. Why is it so important to a private corporation to introduce the draft and to make sure that all the young men and women in the United States go to their military service so that they could then be sent over back to the Middle East to fight and die for Israel? We can't be sure that they are unable to do this anymore. And there's increasing talk about doing this. And there's an increasingly blatant, brazen commitment to Israel above everything else. We cannot explain this like a small little country there on the other side of the world that's completely dependent on US financial aid, US military aid, that without military support would basically disappear. How to explain this? And then you get the same from the UK. People in Britain are complaining that their political class is completely dominated by the Israelis, right? Same in Germany, same in many places around the West. That's very, very difficult to explain. And I think that the only explanation is, to my mind, that is consistent with the pattern of developments over the last decades, is that the conspiracy goes right back to the city of London, to where Israel was founded, right? And it goes right back to those vested interests who have decisive financial power over basically all of the Western world, because they control everybody's central banks, they control credit creation, they pick winners and losers, they decide who's going to be the oligarch, they decide who's going to control the media. You know, Rupert Murdoch in the United States has, he was like an obscure newsman in Australia, and now he becomes this big global king of news. Well, who gave him, who made it possible for exactly that guy to become so dominant in the news media, controlling Fox News and Wall Street journals and who knows what else? Well, it was the Rothschilds. It was them. And they are the ones who are basically patron saints of the state of Israel, and have been for over 100 years, right before Israel's creation. The Balfour Declaration was issued to Lord Walter Rothschild. And, coincidence that when the war started on 28 March of this year, that it was none other than Nathan Rothschild who was kind of gloating about it and saying, Iran Revolution 2026.
February 28th. February 28th.
What did I say?
The war is set March 28th.
Oh, sorry, March. Yeah, February. So he rarely tweets, but he tweeted out Iran hashtag Iran Revolution 2026, and then his comment is, history is written by the winners. What's it to him?